Go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you for hosting us. We don't have any remote participants, is that correct?
No, there are two staff members on, so unless they have comment, oh, no remote participation from the board. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. The first item is to rule on the minutes of the last meeting for March. If you have any comments, suggestions, additions? If not, can I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes as written.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, let's talk about announcements and then we'll get public comments. Announcements from anybody, folks in general. That being the case, anybody online wishing to comment publicly?
If you're on the Zoom call and you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise your hand function now or raise my hand. Going once, twice. Looks like you don't have any public comment today.
Okay. Next item is our continuing education, and we are honored to have Susan Huffman, who's going to talk about the JMRL Nelson County Public School Partnership. I'll turn it over to Susan.
If I stand right here, is that good? And it's my voice all right? Okay. Well, I'll keep on roll with David.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure how we'll manage this, but we'll manage it. As if we don't have enough to do in the library, then I said, let's start a partnership with the school system. Why? Why would I possibly do that? Well, I think I need to give you some of my background first. This is my retirement job. I taught school here in Nelson County for 30 years. I came in 1985 and taught at Ryan Primary School before they even built the two big schools. I taught second grade, and then when I moved in 95 when they opened up Tower River, I taught second grade and then third grade, and then went back to school toward the end of my career and got my degree for in library science and finished up my 30 years at Tower River as a librarian there. I always said that when I got to 30 years, it was time to go. Whether I was happy or discontented, it was time to go. And my purpose behind that was because I wanted to leave space for somebody young to come in, because they come in with all these great ideas and all this energy, and I wanted to give them that space and that opportunity. But about a week later, I was in Food Lyon, and way down the bottom of the parking lot, they heard this voice. And sometimes it's Miss Muffin. I want you to know that as kindergartners, I was Miss Muffin. But and then it suddenly hit me. In a couple of years, these children aren't going to know who I am. And it frightened me because for so long, I had been that one person in the grocery store. They went, "You get groceries?" And it really bothered me. And I had started pursuing this job because I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more in Nelson County. I wanted to be here and have my hands here. And about that time, John Holliday and I had talked about this position. And lo and behold, scared me to death that day. It was David and John Holliday and
Mary Coy.
And I sat here in this room, shaking my head. And when I walked out, John said, "Now we have other people that we're going to be interviewing for this job. You're one of the first rounds." And when I left, I said, I didn't get it. And I was just crushed because I thought that this would be my one opportunity to be able to continue to touch this woman's lives. But lucky for me, believe me, lucky for me.
Lucky for us.
And I got disappointed again because not a lot of children come to the library. And some of the statistics, you'll understand why when you see the statistics in 29 minutes. In 2010, the total population in Nelson County was 15,020. In 2020, it dropped to 14,775. The Weldon Institute says we're going to continue on that downhill slide. Part of the problem is the median age in this county is 51.3. The number of households is over 8,000, but the number of households with children is just a little over 2,000. There's 10% of the population that is 0 to 9 years old. There's 9% of the population that's 10 to 19. The total school enrollment has continued to drop. This year it's 1,480. The children that are under 5 years and under are 664. The number of children, and this is the key for us, the number of children that are ready, that have had some type of preschool readiness when they come to school in Nelson, it's only 22%. So teachers have a lot of work and they need all the help they can get. So I was hoping, and we've been working on it for a while, that we could come up with some type of formal partnership with the school system. We've been doing some things informally with them, but last year we managed to get it going. And we have a mission statement. I'm not going to read it to you, but we have a mission statement, and I can send all this to you, that talks about how we're going to work together in order to advance those literacy skills with the children from age 0 all the way up to 19. And those are some things that we agreed upon for the school system and the library. We have an advisory committee. It's all the librarians in the county. It's staff members from the central office. It's staff members from the JMRL, and they form the advisory committee. And we meet 3 times a year. We meet in September, again in January, and in April at the end of the school year. And of course, we have some current programs already. We have our teacher cards that just started. We have really good, and not as good as I'd like it to be, but we've got really good participation for teacher cards. They're just so appreciative that they don't have fines or fees on those cards, and that they can have those books checked out a little longer to them. Something that I've done since my second year is something called Nelson Reads. And what I do is the beginning of the school year, I give each school, each elementary school, and the one private school in the county, 12 books, 12 picture books for them to read, brand picture books that they will eventually add to their library. What I ask the librarians to do is between September and January to read all those books to the children. However they want to do it, it's in their ballpark. And then in January, we vote, and we come up with their top 6 books. And then from January to May, they reread those top 6 books, and I do art projects with them. With those, there's one for each grade level. We pick a book that's kindergarten, I do an art project with all the kindergartners. And then I do an art project for everything. And then in May, we vote again, and we come up with their Nelson Reads picture book for the year. We have had so much fun doing it. The librarians at Tie River and Rockfish did a video of reading the book and talking about the book with the children. And so it's just been delightful. Every year they come up with something new to do with it. And we are continuing our pre-kindergarten visits that I have done since day one, because I just, the children that are in Head Start don't get the full services in the elementary schools. And so I knew that they needed some extra, so I worked with them a little bit here and there. Okay, so now we started a partnership. This year we formally started in October, had our first meeting. And one of the first things we're going to do, and we're continuing to work on it, it's not an easy process to get library cards for all the children. There's a lot of steps to follow. So we're working on that. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have library cards for all the children. We've got book clubs for all the children. Devil's works with the high school and middle school. They've got book clubs, and our new staff member, Ms. Reed, does an elementary book club on graphic novels. So it's been very popular, and we've had lots of success with those. And the next thing that we're working on right now are some teacher theme bags. I've asked the teachers to give us some ideas about theme bags, but and they're still working on it. But what we're doing is going ahead and doing something. We have set of 12 immediate community books. This would be 2nd, 3rd grade. And inside it, we have a kit for the teacher that has all kinds of ideas of things to do with the medium community books. So all they do is check this out. We've got all their ideas, all their books, and they can go with it and run. So we're working on author studies, we're working on books for young children, we're working on science books for the older children. And what I've asked the teachers to do is they give us one area that they have trouble finding resources for. We can pull those resources and make things for them. So we're working on that this year, but it's well underway. Another thing that we're doing this year is we're doing school visits. Starting in January, I have visited all of the fifth grade children, which is over 100. Over 100 fourth grade children, over 100 third grade children. I'm visiting second grade this week, kindergarten, first grade are in 2 weeks. Mrs. Ellis has met with all of the sixth graders. We've had the ninth graders all here. And Mrs. Ellis has also gone and set up in the cafeteria at the high school, and middle school. So we've had a really good partnership with the librarians. The next thing that we've done is we have done a library pickup. We have, if a child comes and checks out a book here, they have trouble getting it back. We do the tote with the librarian, they can drop it with them, and we will pick it up for the librarian will bring it here. But it's made it easy for the children to be able to get their books back. Also, we have, before we get to the STEM competition, we have hosted several events for the school system. In February, we hosted literacy nights for the 2 elementary schools. We had 120 parents and children here for the Tyler River one. We had 85 children and parents here for the Rockfish one. What we did is the reading specialists from the schools worked with the parents in the library. We kept all the children in here and did activities and story time. And then we put them together and did a tour of the library, which was extremely successful. The parents were so glad because they said, it's really nice to come someplace in the school, someplace other than the school to do this. Now, STEM competition starts this week. What we've done, we were going to put this on for year 2, and they kept saying, could you? So we're doing poetry and science this week. I'm doing it with second grade. And what they're doing is I'm also getting in how to make a poster. Teachers don't have time to teach the children how to make a poster. They just go, please make a poster about this, I want you to have this on it. They don't have time to teach them how to do that. So this week I will be teaching the second grade children how to put a poster together. It's going to have to do, we've already picked the poems, and so the poem is going to go over here. It has a specific science topic. And then over here, they're going to do a 3D. They're going to do the title, and then down here, they have to do 3 facts about whatever topic they've chosen. We're doing butterflies, bugs, bees, chameleons, planets. So lots of fun things like that. And then next year, we're hoping to up it a level and go to the middle school and high school. Some type of STEM competition. Okay, now we're into year 2. What we are doing this fall is we're going to host books and brunch for the new teachers, well, for all the teachers. One of their in-service days, we're going to set up here and have them be able to drop in all day. We'll have resources for them and be able to come to the library and get their cards and take care of all that. We want to move Nelson Reads up to the middle school and high school level. We're going to call that the reading challenge. What we'd like to do is have them read maybe a couple of books and then do a Jeopardy type competition and have a traveling trophy for different classes. We also want to do something Makerspace Mondays. That'll be next year. We'd like to do it here, but maybe do a combination of each place. We do have it set up so an activity bus will come by here. The parents have to sign off that they can come here and that they will pick them up at the correct time. But that is a possibility that they don't have to go get them and bring them here and then go get them and come back. We're also helping with special events. We've helped with Literacy Night and all of these different types of things that happen during the school year. We're also giving them resources and helping them with all kinds of things. And we've had a couple of calls. Would you come and do this in my classroom? So we're going to be doing that too. And collaboration above all is key. We want them to be able to come here on field trips. We want to be able to go there. We want them to be able to communicate with us at any time about things that they need and things we can do for them. And vice versa. We've got something new rolling out here to be able to check them out about that. And then we will evaluate in April. Well, it's going to be May now. When we meet, we're going to talk about the program, set some new goals, set some new experiences, and some other things to do. So, having said all that, the task is not to see what has never been seen before, but to think about what has been thought before, but what you see every day. So take something that you see every day and think about it in a different way. And that's what we did with this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
I have a couple of simple ones, but when you were talking about the statistics, the demographics, did you say there were 1,200 students total
1,460 students total,
in
all the schools. But that's also declining. Last year was 15,000 something, it's 14. Now, some of the decline because a lot of the children after COVID are now being homeschooled. They happened as well.
And they've closed some elementary schools.
No. No. We have two, they closed them along, in 1995, they closed, Fleetwood, Masses Mill, they closed Ryan and built Tide River. And then they closed down Rockfish, and of course, the small school was at Schuyler, and that became Rockfish River. So they built two brand new elementary schools, they closed all the little schools.
another question I had was the books and lunch.
Yes,
Was that for teachers?
for teachers,
New
yes.
teachers?
No, it's gonna be for all the teachers.
Oh,
Last year, we did tours for the new teachers. They bought them in on a special day for tours. But books and budget's gonna be for everybody.
and everything you said sounds absolutely fantastic. I am so excited. As a former teacher and high school librarian, you have it. You got that going there. This is gonna be fantastic.
Well, it has, I love it. I just
It
love
shows.
it. It's been so much fun. So it's,
It all sounds fantastic.
thank you.
I have a question about the Delia bag.
Yes,
Is that also coordinated with the SOLs?
now, these are according to reading SOLs. The science and history ones will be coordinated with their SOLs. Like we have one we're working on, excavation, hibernation, because those are different topics to teach. So we've got some other things like, continents are always difficult to be working on some bags for that. Lots of other things. You're welcome.
I know there might be more than one, but one in particular, daycare and preschool. Have you thought about going that direction?
Our outreach vehicle, it's supposed to arrive in June. That's on our outreach. We're gonna be going to all of the daycares. There are two that we know of in the company. A couple of home ones that we're thinking about, if they will allow us to come, they have more than just a couple of children. We'll also be going to the senior centers, the outreach vehicle. So, yes, they are on our radar.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your outreach meeting?
Well, it is a Ford Transit. It was ordered 2 years ago. You have to. We're using some of their Bill Nelson Library money to purchase it. We had a donor come forward at the very end, when we were close to $400,000, and she called David and she said, "I've got some stock I'd like to sell. Would you like to have it?" And he said, "Of course." It was it ended up being
It was
$125,000.
the entire cost of the vehicle, yeah.
So we said, that's what we're gonna use for that vehicle, and so that's what we want to do. Transportation is a real issue in Nelson County. So we need to go to them, we need to go to the schools, we need to go to pockets where there are children, pockets where there are adults. Since we know that the age in this county is older, we need to be able to go to the senior centers, we need to be able to go to all of the fairs and all of that. Well, we could invite to come to the health fair in July with their outreach vehicle. So that's what we're gonna do with it. It's not a bookmobile, but we would be able to take books and programs to people.
And of course, we're also hoping if Nelson County fully funds the budget request for this year to be able to bring some bookmobile service every other Friday to Nelson County as well. And that would be the vehicle where you go in and check out books. Susan's talking about more of this outreach vehicle where you go and perform programming, you do a story time, you educate people about databases, like it's about the people, not checking the materials out. So we're hoping to have a lot of coverage in the county here next fiscal year.
We are hoping if they pass this also be able to put a vending machine and locker system over in the Nellis Ford area. Because we know that that's, even though the library appears to be simply located, it's really not. A population is over that way.
Two questions. I was interested to hear you identify the trend for homeschooling.
Yes,
Have you thought a little bit about how to connect with those folks? I imagine they're not as centralized as in schools, you have, ways to reach everyone. Yeah. it's
we
something that
already,
you have,
we
so-
already have, they have co-op, and real often we'll go and do story time or book clubs with the co-op.
Hmm.
So yes, the person that's in charge of the co-op comes real often, so we partner with them for all the time.
Okay, great.
So yes,
And then I was also curious about the Makerspace Monday. What are those Makerspace facilities? Are there things here, or is that part of an activity box? Also, what usually Makerspace, you're working with some kind of tool,
yes.
and what are those, and where do they live, and who owns them?
And we have lots of makerspace stuff that we bought with grants, that we got with Pro Nelson, we got. Plus, we're going to be purchasing some more things, the 3D printer, we're going to be doing Cricut.
Do you have a 3D printer here?
We're going to come with some.
And you have a.
It's coming in the van.
Yeah. I'm just curious, maybe you'll point this out at the tour later, but what your space is for.
We're going to be using the business center. It's going to be Makerspace Business Center.
The original plans for the renovation here included basically the latter quarter of this room to be a makerspace zone, and it ended up being cut for cost.
Maybe it's too long, so.
So, we still, I think, have some thought about in the future, trying to carve out a little bit of this room to make a separate physical area, but right now it's Susan has the stuff and brings it out to wherever we can find room for it.
So it's more of a scheduled access type of.
Right now,
Yeah.
we want to make it so we're looking at designing in the business center when you see it, to have it so that it can easily fold from one thing to the other. So, we're planning this fall.
Thank you so much. You're heading this.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you for sharing, Susan. And Susan, you'll be available at when the meeting's over to give a tour.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay. Next up, policy committee report.
Okay, the policy committee met earlier today and discussed a couple of policies. Just reading in the order that they're listed in this agenda here. We discussed the confidential patron records. That is motivated by, well, I guess we'll have a first reading today, and I guess we would put that under. Just trying to decide how much of it to explain right now for first reading. I think we'll have a first reading today. So you tell me where that's going to land in the agenda, and I'll just kind of discuss that.
We can do that.
Right after this.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fine. So you'll see that the change that the policy committee is recommending today in their draft that they're presenting first reading is very minor, but it opens a question, and it's a change to the age at which confidentiality applies. Right now it's 16, but we can try to come to our attention that 18 would be required there to be in compliance with state law, which was vague enough that we had to get legal opinion to tell us what the law actually said. But it kind of opened up a broader discussion about, well, what is a minor to JMRL? This kind of came up when we talked about the fines and fees. I think we're looking at that today also. Yes, and you'll hear that we're taking out a specific language that says 16 and making that more broad to just say minor. But that we kind of identifying is we don't have a great documentation. One place to point to is what does minor mean? So I think we're going to pursue a simple underlying policy that's age of juveniles versus various patrons. We'll come up with a simplified name for it, but that's something that we're looking at down the pipe. We're going to see if we can get that in kind of a simple way, and that would provide. And one thing we're looking at there is, are there places where one age is appropriate and other places where a different age might be appropriate? So we need to be able to, we need to be flexible to address any of those types of situations. For today, the 16 versus 18 is something we're specifically recommending because it's a legal requirement. Meetings and conference rooms, is listed today for potential first reading. We've opened that up to, that's gonna be a broader effort. We're gonna basically redo, right now, it's a very intricately described policy that has a lot of procedural stuff. You can reserve a room for 3 hours and then you can reserve it again for 3 hours after, there's all sorts of language, which the public does need to have a very clear communication of what they need to know about using conference rooms. But it kind of came clear to us that there's enough variation between branches because different branches have different facilities. Making the policy level just some more broad kinds of statements, like that it's open to all regardless of your regardless of use, and that the library doesn't endorse those are sort of some broad things, and then at the same time, staff is going to undertake an effort to, and it's going to happen at the branch manager level, to discuss kind of clear handout level or procedure level use guidelines that would be for the public. So that's going to take a lot of real detailed sleeve rolling. There'll be a lot of sleeve rolling to happen. So that's going to be probably the next time we'll see that. David is working on that with the staff working group, and he'll have a report for the policy committee at our next meeting in 2 months. So we'll see at that point what's ready for any presentation or we'll get an update on how that's going. But that's where it's heading. So nothing to share today. Public employees code of ethics and library code of ethics we did discuss today, and I think we're very close to a recommendation. We're not going to read one today. We want to, at the same time we show you those changes, some of it is just as a heads up or a preview. For example, the public employees we're recommending to deprecate as a policy because it's covered by things in the City of Charlottesville handbook, which recently went through a major revision. And so we want to show you there's some changes to the JMRL employee handbook, which are going to summarize the main bullet points that staff need to know. And we want to show you that at the same time as we're recommending this deprecation of the public employees. So it's actually a kind of combination. We're deprecating what's there, combining that into the public, into the library employees with a brief statement that is covered by City of Charlottesville handbook, and we'll show you we'll show you the staff level procedural changes at the same time. So that's the status update. You do see it in your handouts here, but we're going to wait for either 1 or 2 months to show you all of those things at one time and kind of open it up for first reading at that point. That's my report. Questions for Mike?
I appreciate the carve out for voter registration efforts in the solicitation clause on the meeting and conference room use.
Yeah, so that's something that's a question. The type of question is, does that live at a policy level or does that live at a procedural level? Probably policy because it's broader, but it's an example of the type of question that we're trying to get right as far as a simplified policy level version that handles kind of broad concepts, and then with a more detailed, day-to-day use at sort of a procedure and a slash handout.
I think that does well.
Okay. Now, under new business, we have a lot of potential. Everything we do is potential. A lot of potential. I'm concerned with that. So we're going to have the first reading of the 4.224, which is confidentiality of patient records.
And I think from number 1 here, this is the only one we're gonna have a reading out of. And the only change there is a 6 was turned into an 8 in the number 16.
So we will vote on this next month.
Correct.
So
There's also a period. I'm sorry.
After procedures there.
minute shows the meeting be generated.
Is there?
In that sentence after the.
Oh, yes. And a period.
Didn't want to, you know. undersell it.
Don't tell it to me.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, so number two. We're, the meetings and conference meetings.
We're gonna skip until we've got,
Skip the code of ethics until-
yes.
So I hope everyone had a chance to, read through David's explanation of the slight change to state funding and how we're keeping state funding. We're not reimbursing this state. We're going to- What's the word they're using? Grant, thank you.
This is likely to also happen again going into next fiscal year because the state budget likely will not be finalized before JMRL's budget is finalized, but we can do it earlier in the year. Now that we know, the basic change is that the city wants a board motion to say, yes, we're going to add this money to the budget for JMRL to expend. So in both this and the next thing, the money is coming in from outside sources. The board just needs to say, yes, we accept this, and yes, we will expend it.
So we need a motion to accept and expend those state aid funds which we have received.
I will move that JMRL accept the Library of Virginia's granted allocation of state aid funding of $107,115 and authorize the expenditure of that funding for library materials.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to clarify my recollection that is our annual state aid funding is more like 800K, and this is the difference between something that had been previously budgeted and there was a change to that.
Correct. This is the difference between the budget that this board adopted last June and the final state budget. The difference was $107,015 more than our board had said.
So the idea is that the first 700K, I'm just using a round number, was already accepted as part of our budget.
Correct. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
No, I just want to get it.
Yeah, no, this is- it's a-
consciousness, what the state aid is not 100K, it's the.
Right.
state aid Is closer to 800.
It's the difference between, let's see if I made a note. No, of course not. It's the difference between what JMRL budgeted for coming into the year, which was an estimate at the time,
So are we probably gonna have to do this every year, basically, because.
moving forward, unless the state has been later on their budget adoption recently. If it gets back into they're done before June, then we'll have the correct number when the board votes the full amount in June. So it was 735 plus 25, is that right? So what is that? About $760,000 is what this board accepted last year, and the end result ended up being 760 plus this 107,000. So it's good news.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. So the 107,115 is an addition to that or?
When the state finally passed their budget for this year, the total amount allocated to JMRL was $860,000, and JMRL had only budgeted to receive that 700 and I'm already messing up the numbers, a lower amount. So the money has already come in. The state has already sent this money to JMRL, and we use state aid entirely for books and materials. So that money has come in. JMRL is ready to spend it in the last quarter, but because it's not in our budget that the city of Charlottesville manages with their software, it looks like, oh, we've only got 700 and some $1,000. And to get the last things ordered for the last of the year, we need approval from the board to say, oh, it was really 800 and some, here's an additional. So it's not a new thing. The state didn't send us a new check. It's just the dollar amount that they ended up on was larger than what we thought it was going to be at the tail end of last fiscal year.
And that amount will stay the same, even though the state hasn't passed it.
Correct. That's the amount for this current fiscal year that we're under.
Right.
So for our budget that the board will vote on in June for next year, we have a number that we think is what the state will have, but it's very likely the state won't actually vote on a budget in June this year. So we're going to have to do the same thing. We're giving our best guess. And if it changes, the board will have to have a motion to either up or down to reflect what the change is.
Yes. So, take a vote on Martin's motion. Is very clear on Martin's motion? Very clear. Yes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we're gonna do the same thing now with, accept and expend the Friends Family of Funds and the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation. Those are the grant funds that we get every year. And again.
That we
we're not-
request every year.
Request every,
Yeah.
thank you. Then again, we are changing from a reimbursement model to a grant model.
So in the past, the library would go to the Friends Endowment and say, we have a special project that we would like you to support. They would say, we support that. JMRL would expend the funds, they would send the funds back in to be made whole. And it's a semantic difference here, basically. The city is telling us that that is not an actual reimbursement. You can't just do one for the other because it is new revenue, basically. So the board needs to approve, oh, we're getting this new revenue and you can spend it, although the end is a zero-sum game. So JMRL buys these things and then the CACF pays JMRL basically for those things.
And this is basically everything that we're the trailing fiscal year or?
This is for the current fiscal year, so it's fiscal year 20. So this includes the funding for the vehicle that Susan just talked about. It was 2 years ago that was ordered, but it's gonna, hopefully, it's gonna be here any day now. And JMRL is gonna have to pay the bill, and then the CACF will, because they granted and accepted that they would pay from the fundraising for this building, they'll give us a check. But JMRL needs authorization from the board to spend that money and then get it back.
So some of this total is things we've already spent, I'm thinking of programming that the Friends usually covered, and some of it is things that we're anticipating.
In the last quarter of this year. And that's exactly right. Some of them are things that we've already spent. So the same page programming was paid for out of this, and JMRL's, I'm trying hard not to use the word reimbursement, but we're seeking funding back for the money that JMRL spent, that the Friends Family of Funds said that they would pay for. But we need authorization for that. And then some are things that we're going to be buying between now and the end of the year.
Motion.
I move that JMRL accept the Friends Family Fund grant an allocation of up to $266,000 and authorize the pass-through expenditure of that funding for the support of library services.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Okay, great, thank you. I don't think the city has. All right, so number 4 is. Vote on it right now. Next up is our schedule of library closings, is schedule 5.4. And I think the only thing we usually discuss in this is where Christmas falls and how that affects the library. I know we've had discussions about this in the past. And this year, Christmas is on a Monday. So the proposed schedule is to be closed on Christmas Eve, Christmas day after, and the second day after, so 4 days, one of which we would normally be closed anyway, which would be Sunday, except for dental. Questions about that or any other part of the?
Yeah, just to clarify that Christmas Eve Sunday would not be a paid holiday for staff. The staff that normally would be working on Sunday at the Central Library, which is the only branch that has Sunday hours, would just work their full schedule during the week. So it's not a paid holiday, but the library, the Central Library would be closed. It's what we do on Easter as well.
Questions? Anybody okay?
So these closings are for all the branches
Yes.
except for the Easter one.
And then Christmas Eve as well, if the board,
And the only reason that's the case is because the Central is the only branch that has Sunday hours.
Everybody's okay with it? May I have a motion to accept the proposed schedule? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. Start saving the folks now, 4 days out.
digital library is always open.
so we're gonna discuss our fiscal year 24, which is next fiscal year, library board meeting and budget schedule, which was in your handouts. And as we've done this year, we will have the road show that we're, little points here to note that on November 27th, we would, be meeting at Gordon Avenue. And then in the first part of 2024, we were in Louisa, then Green, then Nelson, as we did this year, and the rest of the meetings are at Northside. No meetings at Central. That's by design, right?
I think that it's the idea is that 4 meetings a year are outside of the North Side Library. 3 of them are always Green, Louisa, or Nelson, and then the 4th one rotates. So it's Gordon's turn.
When is the last time we met at Scottsville?
I believe we met at Scottsville 2 years ago. Yeah.
I think Crozet has been a longer gap than Scottsville.
Yeah. I feel like I'd like to get to every branch. I don't remember the exact 4 in one.
It's the 4th one. The rotation is Central, Gordon, Scottsville, and Crozet, and we just rotate those on a 4-year basis. So that you would see them once in your term, basically, in a 1 4-year term. But that's certainly up to the board. If you'd like to meet at other branches, then that's your druthers. I'll point out that the only meeting that's on this proposed schedule that is not a 4th Monday is in May next year, where it's 1 week early because of Memorial Day.
Oh, and Christmas.
And Christmas as well. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, the 18th. Because Christmas is a Monday.
Any comments on that? Mike, did you want to propose things?
I mean, I like to get there everywhere, but also I know that it's, it's efficient in some ways to kind of have a routine. So, yeah, I don't, I'm satisfied for now.
Anybody else? With my own bad record in mind, and of course, easy to just drop into any branch at any time. But that's, all right, may I have a motion to accept the proposed library board meeting budget schedule?
Oh, I'll make that motion for it. Proposed schedule.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
I have a question about this 5-year plan being presented for them next year.
I think, Meredith, that's for the annual review where it's just a holdover where the board's to look at it annually. And this year, in lieu of that, we're working on the new schedule. So if it's not ready in April, it just needs to be adopted before July.
And by the way, that's the future meetings problem.
Yeah.
All right, next potential is review of the memorandum of understanding with the Friends of the Library for the use of the lock truck. I have to say, I talked to, actually, I was down at Gordon Avenue last week, talked to Peter Mano, who thought it was just great things in flight break. And I will mention too, just taking some thunder away from David's announcements, that which is the most successful sale that the Friends has ever had.
Crossing it off my list.
Yeah. Okay.
We can afford another one.
We're gonna need one.
Probably some on the books.
They ran out of books, basically, yes.
We need to trust.
I rushed down there on the back of the set of boxes of books.
Would you like me to provide any background on this?
That's an ask. People have questions. We talked about this before. This is the complete version.
And the Friends of the Library Board met last Thursday on the 20th, and they voted to allow their president to negotiate and sign this. So this board could do the same thing. You know, one person needs to sign it. You could vote to allow Tony to sign it. The bottom line is that it's a truck that JMRL would have surplused in the past because it's public property. We'd like to allow the Friends of the Library to use it because they're running between 2 locations right now. But we want to make sure that the tax dollars aren't being spent for any of the upkeep or maintenance on it. So it's just laying out the responsibilities there and making sure that the Friends are paying any costs that are associated with, and JMRL is just basically allowing use of it as long as they pay the costs.
Is it in good shape?
It's going to be going to North and Albemarle Square. That's all we ask.
It is running, those things will run for a long time, but part of the agreement here is that it will be maintained by Fleet at the city of Charlottesville, and then the Friends will literally reimburse for those costs moving forward. So as long as this is not financially a problem for the Friends, if we can continue doing it, at some point soon, JMRL will need to get another box truck, and at that point, we'll be able to remove this one and give them, I think the wording here is for the oldest one at all times. So when we get a newer one, they'll get a newer one as well. It's like your kids, you hand the clothes down. Right.
My son didn't like it when I had to hand out from the daughter.
Any other questions? Your motion to accept the memorandum of understanding as has been presented to us.
I move that we authorize the board president to sign and enact this memorandum.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you. Old business, we're going to vote on the policy for circulation fines and fees, 4.25. We have made some revision to that at our meeting in Green County. Basically to move things around. Any comments about the revised version?
Well, there's two options here for the board to consider. Basically taking feedback that we got at our last meeting to try and make a little bit more sense. So the option A, which is the first one in your packet, includes adding the word overdue, which I think just helps to make people understand that this is about materials that are late. And some clarifying language about if you pay all at once for overdue fines, which was Alita's concern last month that wasn't clear enough. And then the other changes were already things that you discussed last month about changing the limit on DVDs from 5 per card to 10, and then adding some language about what some other checkout items are. That's option A. And option B, we also added overdue to the top, but we struck the language about the maximum fines if paid in full. And added that to the bottom as a separate bullet point. I will say I notice a problem here though, in both of them, there should be a strikeout of the for library users 16 and up, which was one of the whole points of this. It's kind of a very important thing here. So the handout is wrong, that anything voted on hopefully would have the removal of that phrase for library users 16 and up, and it would just be covered by the library does not charge overdue fines to juvenile accounts. And either option A. That's the under 18 would be the change.
I kind of lean towards the first one, option A. I find this a little easier to read with the, I like the change from maximum fine to maximum charge and kind of making that distinction a little bit clearer that it's not an additional. But I think that reads a little better up there with the fines and fees and not broken out.
Yeah. In proposed versions, remember, we did change the limit to DVDs from 5 to 10. And we added the employee library kits and major kits at all. Down on the additional fees maintenance.
And just so I'm clear, I apologize that this didn't have that struck through there, but this is a change that the board needs to be aware of. If we change this to juvenile cards and juvenile cards that go up to 18, it means that children that are 16 and 17 will no longer have late fees. So there is an implication greater than just wording in this document. The board votes on that. We'll work on making that change.
And don't you need to define juvenile?
Well, that's what the policy committee spent an hour talking about earlier, so.
Whether you do it, like, not charged by the juvenile accounts, 18 and under.
We could do that. I think the policy committee was talking about having a separate account, a separate policy that says, here's the age of adulthood, but we don't have that in place right now.
I mean, that's fine, but whatever that is, it should also be identified.
Like it needs to be at the top.
Generally, we've tried to future-proof things by kind of pointing to one underline, and so that when if that ever changes, we don't have to change the in places. So that would be the argument for not putting 18 or 16 specifically here, so that we could change it in one place and it would reflect back.
And something like fines, you need to notify people that it's doing something. Maybe to public.
We also need to communicate publicly the fact that especially the public, so they don't have to go.
They don't have to search around for something.
Certain. That would lead me to agreeing that we want specified here.
So would you want to change the current wording for library users 16 and up to being for library users 18 and up? Just make a change to the current wording that was in there?
Or you could say the library does not change code fines to juvenile accounts, parentheses, although that would imply that all juvenile, the definition of juvenile would be. Which, but you said that it's in fact what you're going to do, based on the.
For cards, yes, they will be juvenile cards.
I would suggest juvenile in the, not at the top, but at the asterisk.
So that was Meredith's suggestion too.
Juvenile account parentheses.
Man, this is, we do review this every year. Not
Correct.
the policies where it's a thing that comes in. So that's,
We want to get it right.
well, actually, this one we didn't.
So the suggestion was ages 8, no. It's not ages 18. It's not 18 and under though. It's under 18. So does the language need to be under 18? Juvenile counts. Do we need years of age or does under 18?
18 inches.
So I'm making this edit that you're looking at right now on the option A there, which is the only voice I heard was Thomas is saying he preferred A to B. Any other?
What's 15?
So the motion would be something like for option A with the changes discussed today. Incorporated.
I think, I don't like the maximum fine on library loans, but because we are, as a, as a system, if we're, they charge us more. And if somebody say, 20, say a month, they had a month, had the library book, do a month. Then, and $3, that's only 2 days. And then we eat the rest of it.
Yeah, and that it tends to come out in the wash because they're mostly from academic libraries, which don't really charge overdue fines to JMRL for it. So for some of them, we might pass on a charge that then the lending library wouldn't get. So it tends to kind of even out, but I hear what you're saying. If somebody lost the item, we would charge them for the entirety of the item. So that's a board decision, you're not talking about the wording of it, you're talking about the concept of it, yeah.
Separate. There's a book from another library where they're not mentioned that policy if it starts hurting us.
Yeah, I think we could probably get data on how much we have charged our patrons for ILLs. Getting data on how much lending libraries have charged us might be a bit more difficult. but I don't think we're talking about large amounts of money. It's a small percentage of use.
And can you give us a round number of how many ILs we do?
I can find out a raw number. I don't have it off the top of my head. Yeah.
Mostly about, you know, I know there's a fraction in circulation.
Yeah, and we do charge a $3 fee for people to use the service in general to pay to offset the cost of postage. So, you know, that also is a kind of, comes out in the wash number. Like sometimes we pay more than that for postage, sometimes we pay less. So the whole program is a little bit, it's not designed to be a money-making venture.
But if we don't want to eat.
Right.
Wash is good, whole is bad.
So the question was, how many ILLs we do and any financial data I could provide for that.
Well,
We have to have an extra library.
Yeah.
Or. And I have a totally unrelated question. I wrote there. Kilowatts.
some of those little things that you plug into the wall, and then you plug something into it, and it tells you how many watts you're using, how many amps. And we've had those available.
Long time. Yeah.
And then
No, those came as part of a grant that the library received at some point. I think it was likely from one of our funding partners. It was like, oh, hey, this is to help people figure out, what their home electric usage is. Yeah.
I just have one question, just, I was coming in and one of my grandsons lost a book from the children's section.
Mhm.
So that would be the cost of that book, somebody would be able to figure it.
We-
Plus $5.
Right, we would tell them the cost of it plus $5.
Do we feel like we're ready to vote on option A or option B? Or are we really gonna change it? We want to. I mean, we were hoping to put this in effect for May 1st.
It doesn't, this is the board reviews this annually. If it's June, it's not the end of the world.
The question would be, does any decision on the interlibrary loan depend on what data that we got, that David's gonna tell us, or, I mean, personally, I'm kind of comfortable that the scale is small enough that I'm not concerned about whether it's a plus or minus,
Yeah. I mean, I'm more curious.
So that was a curiosity and not need to know for this.
All right, so may I hear a motion for either option A or option B?
I move that we accept option A, circulation fines. With the changes.
With the changes,
With the changes.
changes that have been-
With the changes that have been made. And charges.
Well, the other thing that we need to change is at the top of option A, where it says you struck out fees.
Charges.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I'm missing something. What is that?
Yeah, his is right.
Oh, it still got struck out in the handouts?
Yeah.
Jeez, I don't know what happened to those handouts.
Yeah, option A was in there.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So that will be part of the changes discussed today, basically.
All those in favor of accepting option A with the changes that have been proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Great. Thank you. All right. Much potential. Oh, there's more potential in old business. All right, budget update, please.
Okay, thank you all. That was a lot of board work. We just had to go through. More than most months, it added up. Okay, so for your information, last month I provided you with the schedule of when our jurisdictions were going to be voting on their budgets and just an update on that. Currently, Charlottesville has passed a budget for next fiscal year, which includes full funding from JMRL's request. Louisa was the next scheduled to pass, but they have delayed a vote on that, awaiting more information on the state budget and mulling a tax relief program. So next up that we're aware of is Albemarle on May 3rd, where the proposal includes full funding for JMRL's requests from next year. We have not yet heard from Nelson County about what their level of support is going to be. They usually vote on their budget in June as well. So we've been reaching out to the jurisdiction a little bit to check in on that because it will include the extra bookmobile service that Louisa has in their budget as well. So any questions about where we are in the cycle? At this point?
So the scorecard, if you're following along at home, is pretty good so far.
Yeah, so far so good. Ophelia and Wendy and I have talked to Louisa County, and then Alita and Susan and I are working with Nelson as well. In Green, we're expecting full funding.
Good. Which brings us to the library director's report.
Okay, few things of note. Some of you might be familiar with a local resource and specifically in the Charlottesville area, but it serves the whole region, called Sevillepedia, which is was owned by Seville Tomorrow, which is an independent news provider in the Charlottesville area. We are in discussions with Charlottesville Tomorrow about taking over management of Sevillepedia, so I thought the board should be aware of that. We would work with the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society in partnership on that and what it would look like. For now, it largely means taking over the remote hosting with the options down the line to bring that onto JMRL's own server resources. So we're working out some details on who would manage what, ensuring that if JMRL takes ownership of the site, that it would be in compliance with all of JMRL's policies and procedures. But it is a very valuable local resource. It runs on a wiki software, so it's got a lot of information about the history of the area and the region. And the library has worked with the Historical Society on some programming around it. They've had edit-a-thons in the past where folks would come in and work on specific topics. So just making you aware that those discussions are underway now. And the next step is continued discussions with Charlottesville Tomorrow.
That JMRL staff would not do a content.
Correct. JMRL staff, there's nothing to stop staff members from updating information as they find things on their own time or potentially as part of a program. If they're working with a group on, like, we're going to do something about the history of JMRL, then they might work on it there. So it would be taking over hosting duties. There's some amount of back-end monitoring that would need to happen as well. There's like account creation and moderation, things like that. Becomes a different thing when it comes over to the library. It's then public property, so we need to make sure that we follow all of our own rules and regulations there. So JMRL has been part of the salary study that the city of Charlottesville commissioned last year. I'm going to be meeting with the head of HR from the city next week to begin work on how JMRL is going to plan to address this. We're anticipating it's going to show a significant gap between JMRL's pay scale and the comparisons that were used for it, except at the very bottom where the board has implemented a $15 minimum wage. So at every other step in the pay scale, I'm expecting that there will be work to do. So staff will begin working on calculations to that to share with the board's finance committee later in the summer, I would hope, with the hope to at least begin to address this issue in fiscal year 25 budgeting. So just so you all know, like, we're finishing up budgeting now, but it's already time to start thinking about budgeting moving forward, and that likely trying to figure out what to do with the results of the salary study will be the top priority for the next several years there. The subcommittees of the 5-year plan committee have already been talking about how this is going to impact system-wide goals. This week on Thursday is Poem in Your Pocket Day, so be on the lookout if you go by any JMRL location or some places out in the community. Staff are busy rolling up little poems. The majority of the work, besides the rolling up of the little poems, is receiving permission from the poets to hand them out. Basically, it's because potentially it's a copyright violation unless they say yes, it's okay. So be on the lookout this Thursday for poetry around the communities. Tony beat me to the news that the just concluded book sale is the most successful book sale the Friends have ever had. They raised a total of $149,317 over a 10-day sale. And it is true that they were running out of materials at the end. They had yeah. So congratulations if you see any of our friends. I know we've got some folks here. Wendy's on the Friends board, Ann's the former president of the Friends board, Tony's the former president of the Friends board. If you see any of them, tell them congratulations on a tremendously successful sale. And the last thing I have to announce is that next week is actually Preservation Week, and JMRL is going to be partnering with the UVA Library Preservation Services team to celebrate this April 30th through May 6th. Patrons will be able to bring one book per family that needs some TLC to any JMRL branch, we will ship it to UVA that will do preservation work on it. There are some limits to what they can and can't do. They're not looking to take your incredibly valuable first print, Shakespeare folios, but if you have books at home that would need to be looked at, we've got an information sheet that's going out to branches today. And they're also hoping to have a before and after program at one of our branches afterwards to show, like, here's what the book looked like before, here's what we did in advance, and here's what we did. Here's what it looks like now. We've done something similar, I think, one time in the past with is it VHS tapes? Yeah, where the preservation team took them in and was able to repair people's VHS tapes. So it's a good partnership. That all of our locations. So I'm sorry.
Everybody remember VHS?
Every branch is participating, so people in every community can drop things off at their local branch, and we'll send them to UVA. And that's all I have to report today.
Other matters, I have one thing, a reminder that we're in the primary season in elections. I had 2 Democratic candidates show up at my door this weekend. And I reminded them both that we still don't have full library funding on the state. And both of them will be used, but I think they could do it, and it both in the notes. So I just, in the advocacy column, if you do happen to be seeing any candidates from various offices around about, remind them that state still needs to get 100% funding one of these days. I hope that, God would actually having 100% funding from a use.
It seems to be another.
Okay.
But where are they at?
It's a little over 70% now. So it's made quite a few gains in the last 5 years.
Along those lines, if you're talking to Charlottesville or Albemarle folks, it might not hurt to just remind and raise awareness of our central library renovation.
I will say on that note that in the final Charlottesville budget public meeting, they did have an agenda item for a central library renovation. So at least 2 counselors were very interested in moving forward with that and putting it on their, they have a 5-year plan with money committed. They wanted to put it right at the end of that. And they spoke to the interim city manager about it, who informed them that the county currently didn't have this on their 5-year CIP, but the council directed him to speak and report back to them on this. So I know at least the 2 heads of the organizations are having communications about a central library renovation.
Great.
I question, can't remember which of the things you said, but in terms of money going for upgrading the meeting room and all the values, does that mean centralized speaker for Zoom and all?
Yeah, it would be a setup either similar to this here, right? And this one is coming from this TV and that camera on the top and a microphone bar behind you. So you just have to plug into the wall, which is why I have to sit right here, or a mobile one so that you could use it in multiple places in the library. And it's a little more complicated. That's what lives in that case there.
So then, Louisa, when I'm in a meeting in that room, it's disastrous. It's fine if you're there, but if you're trying to participate on Zoom, there's persons walking around
With a computer or a cell phone. Yeah. So there should be something there by the end of the fiscal year that would enable you to plug in directly and have at least a centralized version of that.
Other
Well, Tony, when you mentioned primary season, I thought you were going to be talking about the nominating committee for JMRL.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. Okay.
Which also I think needs to get together and we need to figure out how to move forward with that process.
Right. Those of you who've been on board for a while or previously know that this is the time of year where we form a nominating committee board, so we can pick or nominate volunteer people to be officers in the fiscal year. And generally we have 2 people.
On the nominating committee,
Yeah.
I think it's varied in the past.
Okay. And we should get that underway, because we do change over the fiscal year.
Yeah, you would want to have at the very latest, have a vote by your June meeting.
Correct. Months away.
Yeah, it's 2 meetings from now,
All
so.
right, so if we get a nominating committee together at this meeting, volunteers, and then we could, have those folks work, pose a slate of candidates in May that we could then vote on in June. Would that be reasonable? That sound fair to everybody?
I think so. I think you can also accept nominations from the floor too.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah. Nominations. So, who would like to be on the nominee?
Since I'm leaving, I feel like I should
Okay.
say nice before I go.
Who wants to follow Wendy's sterling example will also be on the nominating today? Thomas, you're
And
leaving.
it's.
I am, yeah.
That's all we do is talk about. How I'm like, it's going.
If you feel comfortable with that. Gee.
Anybody else like to, could have these two short timers? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
And anybody who's here now, just let us know before we walk in the
Yeah,
door.
right.
Or not.
You have any particular interests?
Okay, any other thing? All right.
Also National Library Week.
Oh, thank you. It is National Library.
And there are cookies.
Yes,
Mentioning that?
it was not. I'm embarrassed that it was not on my list. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, yeah. We've got a future agenda items.
We'll have another budget update. Will we have a library meeting report next week?
Yeah, we're expecting to have the final report from the working group next month.
We will have the reading of the ethics.
Well, not necessarily,
You're not gonna have a policy.
we don't have a policy, so that's a PBA.
Okay.
But there would be a vote on 4.224 confidentiality of patron records.
Right.
I believe that we will have a 5-year plan committee before that meeting. So there should be a report there.
When is the director eval?
It's also next month.
So that's a
Yeah.
future agenda. Yeah.
And I guess nominate committee.
Well, also, we will need a
budget.
budget finance committee meeting before then so that they can review the equipment budget and make a recommendation to the board at your convenience.
Good answer.
We will, we'll be back at Northside for your meeting next month. And for the director's evaluation, the note I had was that, we use a survey on Survey Monkey that's based on what's in the state library's handbook. But if you'd like, I could send that out to you all now to preview to see if there's anything you wanted changed about it before officially sending it out for you to fill out before the meeting. Okay.
Any other?
And if I did have feedback on that, would that go to the president? That would go to the board president? That's correct.
On the format,
Yeah.
yeah, either way, I guess it would go to the board president. But if there's a change that needs to happen to it, then eventually it has to come back to staff to make the actual change.
All right, now can I do? Motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you all. Happy National Library Week.
Every week is national.
That's right.